Hello and welcome to another Missing Link webinar. So thank you for joining us, and today I'm delighted that we're going to be discussing the reality of pitching to a pop culture journalist. And I'm delighted that we have joining us Yomi Adegoke, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I did try. I get a thumbs up. So we're going to be talking all about kind of pop culture, about kind of reality TV, which is one of my favorite topics, and I know Yomi loves it too. And we're going to be talking about kind of how reality TV kind of impacts the news cycle, how it affects kind of social media culture as well, and kind of the types of stories Yomi covers, the types of pitches she receives from PRs, the types of pitches she wants to receive, the ones she doesn't want to receive, and how can you kind of grab her attention, the types of subject lines you should try, the ones you shouldn't try, and kind of grabbing her attention for the right reasons rather than the wrong reasons. And hopefully, if we've got time, maybe we'll cover some pitch fails too. But before we get into that, I'm just going to ask kind of Yomi just to give everyone kind of a bit of info about kind of what her roles for both kind of The Guardian and the newspaper involve. But also, I just want to do a special shout out because Yomi has just been honoured by becoming part of the Forbes 30 under 30 list too. So many congratulations for that. That's a huge achievement. Very well deserved. So it'd just be great if you can tell everyone just a bit about kind of your day-to-day, what that looks like, and your roles at The Guardian and the newspaper too.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. As I said to you before we broadcast, this is definitely like a sort of intersection of my favorite things, being reality TV, but also like what not to do and what to do in terms of pitching. So yeah, very happy to be having a chat about this. So in terms of what my roles entail, I am a columnist at The Guardian. I do supposed to be weekly, unfortunately, because of my own personal sort of lack of, I suppose, what would I call it? If I can hear my doorbell, it's throwing me off. My own lack of ability to file on time often. It's fortnightly. In that column, Reality Checked, I talk a lot about reality TV, but also from a more slightly cerebral perspective. So it's not just reviews, it's, about trends and culture and looking at it from a sort of more wide perspective. I also write a monthly column at the iPaper, which is very broad, but tends to mainly focus on popular culture and television and music. And then finally, I do a monthly series at British Vogue, which focuses on essentially anything that crops into my mind, but usually around relationships and, again, sometimes popular culture and television. But it's mainly for the iPaper and the Guardian's Reality Checked column that I'm writing mostly about reality TV.
Brilliant. So given that you've got quite a few different kind of publications that you're writing for, kind of what does the structure of your day look like? Is there any structure to it, or
structures? I was going to say structure is a very grandiose term. But I mean, I'm flattered that, you'd even use the term structure, because there really isn't any whatsoever. I mean, as you can see, like, I've literally got like sort of one eye on the doorbell, one eye on something else. Like, I'm constantly multitasking. And I think, I guess one of the things with journalism is there's a lot of instant reaction. Journalism these days now, anyway. It's often I can wake up one day with basically one deadline and finish the day with 7. If something's happened in a particular space. Again, my speciality lies within reality television and pop culture. And, for instance, if Beyonce, when we're looking at the musical part of my journalism, if Beyonce drops an album, a surprise album, as she, is known to do, then that's like me done for the next few days. I'm focused on that. But then even, for instance, the Drag Race final, which aired, I think maybe a fortnight ago, that was like a really crazy manic period as well, because it's just very dependent on what happens and when it's on the whims of the content. So yeah, there's no structure. That's the long-winded way of saying there's no structure.
So your life is, and your kind of time is very much dictated according to kind of what's kind of, launching, what's going on social media and all those other things.
Absolutely. Yes. Social media is a huge part of it, because as I said, one thing might not be a talking point one day, and then the next day might be the biggest thing since sliced bread. Again, to speak about reality TV, the Circle final. I don't know if anybody watches The Circle in here, but it's a reality TV show on Channel 4. It had a really surprising twist ending, and a story that was essentially not a non-story, but not that many people were talking about it. Now the finale's aired. My whole column has changed in terms of what it's got to be about, because now I've got to react to the Circle finale. So yeah.
Okay, so in that sense, you must get hundreds of pitches from PRs. How do you even kind of think about kind of going through them in your inbox? Do you have any process to it? How do you kind of decide who gets any attention?
I would honestly say to you, it's a job in itself. It really does take a lot of work. You are not exaggerating when you say you must get hundreds. I would honestly say at some points I've received hundreds a day, because I'm on quite a few mailing lists as well. So and because I cover quite a few distinct and different beats, it will be like the beauty, the fashion, and then of course the reality TV, the pop culture, the music. So often hundreds. And I think my process for sort of going through them is, I'm not sure if it's something that is quite peculiar to me, or whether it's something that other journalists can relate to, but I definitely go, what would you call it, subject line first. Which is why when you sort of spoke about, how attention grabbing they need to be, and what I'm looking for me, it's not even necessarily just about them being attention grabbing. For me, it's me looking at something and thinking, can I actually write about this thing? Or is this just something where someone's basically said, hey, this TV show's gone out, this is the press release, like, thanks, bye, and that's that. Normally, if someone has sent me something that has like a nugget of something that I can then spin into something else, so potentially I think it's really useful when I get a pitch that has stats in the subject line, or has really pulled out the kind of nub of what they're trying to say. That's more useful to me than, almost YouTube type clickbait headlines that are like, you're never going to get, like, do you know what I mean? Those kind of really, extreme clickbait kind of subject lines don't work for me at all, because I just think, okay, I want the information up front, because I'm literally going through reams and reams of emails. So for me, I think stats are really, really useful if they're interesting stats, but also something that I suppose gets to the nub of what the story you're trying to get to me is, if that makes sense. So
definitely,
something that's just clear, succinct, concise, and really just gets to the point. I'm really not a fan of when people try to, I suppose, attention grab with just like attention seeking. It doesn't work for me. It's not even a taste thing. It's just, I think, what are you really trying to say? I'll come back to you later after I've like read the subject lines that actually have a point.
Interesting. I guess because you've seen that all before, you know how that works. You're a journalist.
Absolutely,
you've seen it.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah.
Cool. Okay. So of those subject lines, apart from kind of the stats, kind of, is there any kind of tone of voice that particularly kind of stands out to you? Is anything kind of more colloquial? Because we're talking about kind of reality TV or kind of celebrities or anything like that. Do you prefer kind of a more fun tone of voice?
I think I do. God, it's such a fine balance, if I'm being honest. Like, I am actually probably quite picky, because I do like a fun and colloquial tone of voice, but when it's slightly too try hard, I don't know if that's the right terminology here, but it's a little bit too much bay and a little bit too much, like, I don't know, like lit, and just all these like, superfluous slang words like decorating a press release or a pitch that just, again, it just detracts from the point. Like, I speak pretty much non-stop in slang, but you can pitch to me without doing that. I'm going to understand what's being said. It's not necessary, So I'm not against it. I do think, honestly, that like I connect better with pictures that are slightly more fun and irreverent, and I love a bit of wit. And even dad jokes, a bit of humor. I'm totally not opposed to it at all.
You're going to end up with loads of dad jokes.
I'm going to end up with loads of dad jokes now. God, I was asking for it. I can't even complain now. But I just think, you know, it really is a fine balance to strike between cheesy and like corny, and then just like a little bit like, okay, like, you know, those kind of jokes where, you know, it's a silly joke, but you're kind of like, okay, I'll let you have that one because it's kind of fun and it's kind of witty and it's kind of cute. So yeah, for me, I do love a bit of humor, but I think something that really makes me cringe is, and I think it's probably something I see more with fashion brands, to be honest, and fashion pictures and those kind of things, and music. It's just an over familiarity that just feels a bit cringe and like, you know, a bit try hard.
Yeah, definitely. And it smacks of like fast fashion, that kind of. Yeah.
Oh my God, fast fashion are like the worst perpetrators to that. So they talk to you like, I don't know, they're like texting their 13-year-old cousin. It's just horrendous.
Cool. So you mentioned kind of all the kind of different kind of so like different stories and kind of topics you cover, from beauty to music, TV, etc. Do you, you know, if PRs are kind of pitching you, do you have like a particular kind of favorite in there, or do you want pitches, you know, from all those?
That's a good question. I mean, I like writing about anything. So personally, I'm happy to have quite like a wide and broad scope in terms of the pictures I'm getting. That being said, I will say that I think the worst pictures tend to often come from fashion and beauty, because they're so often, this is the thing, this was released today, bye. Like there's never any kind of, and I think that's the thing, is that, you know, we're looking at really oversaturated spaces. Like online is just, there's just content all the time. So for me, like, what is really, really useful is, again, as I said, like angles kind of help us with our job a little bit, just because I might, and this happens often because I suppose I straddle a very weird space in terms of, I'm a journalist, but also, you know, I have a social media platform, and it has a following. So often even if I don't do something as a direct like journalistic pitch, often it can be utilized into like a brand collaboration opportunity. That's happened a couple of times. And I think it can be difficult looking at beauty and fashion pitches for anything other than, I'd say, like my social media platform, because they'll give me like a toner or a serum or a dress or something, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great, I love it. And I'm like pitching to a magazine, like, I want to write about this dress, and it's like, well, what about this dress? Like, we're gonna have to do like a roundup, we're gonna have to do like a, you know, a listicle something. And then when you're trying to, like, you know, I suppose get those ideas for those listicles, it's not, I don't know, like you have to do something to set it apart from the reams, the literal thousands of other listicles and you know, curated galleries that talk about the best serum for, you know, spring 2021. We're getting that specific now, because it's like there's so many lists about serums that it's like we're kind of like, you know, attaching them to months or whatever, because, you know, we don't know how to differentiate like beauty pictures. So I think the worst pictures for me, often because they're just so straight down the line, I don't even honestly open them, to be frank, are usually beauty pictures and fashion ones, because they're just literally like, here is this new launch. And I don't blame them, because it's kind of difficult at times, like what more can be said, but it just, the best fashion and beauty pictures I've ever had are the ones that are kind of like, here's a roundup, because then I can at least picture as a, you know, a thing.
Definitely. So talking about kind of obviously things like kind of Drag Race and the final, at that time, did you receive kind of a lot of pitches, you know, with content around kind of the final and things? I know, you know, personally, I know our agency had a campaign and we had like reactive pitches going out about, you know, how much, you know, whoever won could earn from, you know, influencer earnings and all that kind of thing. Were you inundated with stories around that?
Every time. I think the only time it was worse was when it was the Love Island finale, and it was just back to back. Like, I think like last year it was just, or the year before, no, maybe last year, God, I don't even know what day it is because of COVID, but it was just back to back. I'm not a fan of that pitch, just because I don't know where I'm going to put it, but I do understand the logic. I just struggle with where I'm going to place it. I mean, it depends. I can think of a few publications, to be honest, but I think it can be difficult at times because it's such a common pitch of, you know, like, this is how much this person could be set to earn, this is how what this person could likely be doing, this is like, do you know, that kind of pitch. I definitely got a lot of those around Drag Race.
So given that, you know, you're receiving a lot of kind of very similar pitches, how can PRs kind of set themselves apart when they are kind of pitching to you? Do you have any advice on that?
My main advice, aside from, I mean, I know it sounds really silly and really kind of basic to sort of say, please just have a clear kind of like modus operandi in the subject line, because so many people that I know like legitimately don't even open their, especially because so much, for me personally, so much of my, so many PR pitches that I get go into my promotions. They go into my promotions folder on Gmail. So I'm literally, as opposed to my main inbox for some reason. So for me, I really do just look at the subject line and see what it's saying. And if I don't get anything within that first subject line, then it's rare that I'd even open it up. And then when I am opening it up, again, I want humor, I want playfulness, I want something like, you know, that grabs my attention because it's lighthearted and interesting, without obviously them being kind of cheesy. But on top of everything, I don't want the information buried. Like, I don't want to have to be like scrolling, you know, because it's just so time consuming, and so many of these things are so reactive. I say another thing that just to quickly flip back to Drag Race, another thing that I think is a really good idea is, I'm sure everyone like does this, but it's something that I actually don't mind being nudged on, because normally when, you know, you get those like, you know, repeat emails, it can be a bit frustrating because it's like, oh my God, like I don't even remember receiving this. But what has been happening quite a lot, I suppose, off the reality checks column is I'll write about something, and obviously someone who's probably got their Google alerts on has seen that I've written about it. And so for me with Drag Race, I'd written like a, you know, love letter to Drag Race, and I think World of Wonders PR had reached out to me and said like, oh, you know, can you possibly can you fill in a, you know, belated Drag Races on these dates? And I kind of forgot about it, and they nudged me a couple of times, and I thought, you know, that's completely fine. Like, that's actually something in terms of like me being chased, like I actually don't mind, because I think it's useful for our readers to have that information. But that piece wasn't about, like, it wasn't really connected to anything. So yeah, I just think in terms of like, for me, just looking at etiquette and stuff, I like a clear subject line. I like things to be like clear from the start. And honestly, I do like stats, which is why, as much as I don't love the kind of this person can potentially make this much, I kind of empathize with it as an idea, because I do think, you know, as journalists, we're trying to get the facts out there and get, you know
I guess it's something tangible, isn't it? At least.
Exactly. Oh my God, exactly that. Yeah.
You do something with it,
right?
Definitely. Cool. So is there anything that you hate? Like, what are your pet hates from pitches?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I was going to save this for pitch fails, but I really want to.
We can do it all at the same time if you want.
Now that would be great. Because I think one of the worst things is you can just really tell when, I suppose, something, and I totally understand, because I think journalism and PR are like so similar in terms of like the time constraints and pressures, but you can really tell when someone has just like put something out because it's quick and it's like time sensitive, and they haven't thought it through. Because I mean, I saw this pitch right at the start of lockdown, first ever lockdown last year in March, and I swear on my life, the second I saw it, I thought they're going to send a follow-up email reclaiming that, and they're going to like be like apologizing. I just knew. I think it was like COVID themed cocktails. It was something like, and, you know, now that's fine, because you know, we're how many lockdowns deep? It's all a bit, you know, everyone's used to it. But this was like March 2020. Everyone was terrified. Everyone was like worried about their business, their loved ones, everything. It's like, I think literally the day that it had been announced, I just got this email, and it was like, I don't even know if it was COVID cocktail. It was something like very light and irreverent about COVID that now would be completely fine. But back then, I think we were like waiting for Boris.
It was too soon.
It was so soon. I just thought, oh my God, sometimes you have to wait. And I swear on my life, I think I forwarded it to my sister, and was like, she's a journalist as well, and said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, they're absolutely going to recall this and say like, we apologize. And they did. And I was like, no. So I think for me, sometimes it just is honestly just making sure things are thought out. And like, honestly, I so empathize with everyone's just doing their job.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the positives is like it's rare that like I get a pitch that isn't really like kind and nice and funny and irreverent. They're often like really like, you know, lovely. But I understand the time constraint, but I do think there just has to be a slightly more carefulness and just a bit more thought that goes into it. Another really big pet peeve, and I'm not precious about stuff like this, is just getting my name wrong. And not even in terms of my name. I'm talking about, so as I said, I work with I work in social media at times, so I have an agent, and because I write, I've written books, I have an agent. So what will happen is sometimes someone will have my agent's details, and her name's Chloe. So I'm not talking about them spelling my name wrong. I'm talking about them having not double checked the information, and it's like, hello, Chloe, and I'm like, my name's Yomi, and I know how they've like gone from there, or just not knowing, like, because, you know, of course, I think a really good thing to do is to have that rapport and say, I read your this and I loved it. Yeah. That's great. Like, everyone likes to know that someone's across their work. But what's really frustrating is when that information is wrong, it's like, you might as well just not even put it in there. And it's like, oh, I really loved someone told me I'd written something, and I was just like, I absolutely didn't, but I'll pass on the praise. You know, you want to have your facts right and just it's honestly better to spend, I think, in my mind, that little bit longer on that pitch, and just making sure it's accurate, making sure it's like professional, than just shooting it off because something's happened and you really want to like get it in, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it's just one of those things you hear time and time again from journalists, that people aren't even getting names right. Not like misspelling names, just wrong names.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God.
Oh, dear. And you talked a bit earlier about kind of not having to dig for the important information. Do you have like an ideal pitch length? Is it short? Is it medium? Do you like just a couple of paragraphs or a few bullet points? Like, what's your ideal?
You know what? That's a really good question. Again, I'm going to be annoying where I do that thing and I sit on the fence and it's like, oh, like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and it's like, not this, not that, but just right. Because I really cannot do and again, it's like, I'm showing so much empathy here because I really do feel that
I thought you were going to be brutally honest with me.
I know.
Like, no, I like it like this.
Like, I think it's just, I truly understand, because I'm like, I know that, like, you know, there's so much you want to say about something. You really want to get everything in there. And you want to add the images and stuff. Oh, sorry, another pet hate. When somebody sends me an email and then has like, for some reason, I get this happens every single day. It's like, I'll get an email and then it's like I get a second email that like either the pictures haven't been attached or it's like the same email again, but this time with the pictures attached. It's like, and I'm like, oh, this is just clogging up my inbox. I'm just like, something I might have read, I'm just like, oh, I'll archive that and come back to it later because it's just now taking up physical space. But in terms of length, I think that there is definitely a science to it, I think, because I think I'd honestly rather too short than too long, though too short isn't ideal. Too long, it's just, it can be, it's difficult because it's like, even when something's really, really interesting and, there's lots to say about it, it can just genuinely tasking to scroll all the way through to feel like you're getting all the information. However, of course, when something is slightly too short and you feel like you have to have a back and forth in order to glean more information, that's not ideal either. So I think it really is, to me, I see it as pitching how I pitch articles, which is, I think it's actually kind of similar, just in terms of maybe journalistic pitches are slightly shorter, but just absolutely key information. And that's why I keep talking about the subject and being like, make sure when I was at Channel 4 News, my boss used to literally, he didn't even write bodies of emails. Like, he literally used to write what he was asking me to do in the subject because we didn't have any time. So he was literally just like, he was just like, this is it. And like, it was in the subject. So the minute I looked at my screen, I knew what to do. I'm not saying it has to be that brutal, but like really kind of condensing. Like, I really don't want, like, as I said, like clickbaity kind of headlines, because I'm just not going to bother. But it's good to kind of have something that's like a bit grabby, a bit interesting, but also very clearly states what you're saying. And then I take that same approach in terms of the actual pitch. Like, bullet points for me are always great. Images just attached in the one solitary email. It doesn't have to be pages and pages.
Yeah. Cool. No, I like it. Very specific. Cool. So I think that's all my questions. Is there anything you want to add, like anything else that you think PRs should know that you want to leave everyone with before we go to questions?
I just think, let me think. I would probably say, in all honesty, and again, totally understand that everyone has to do their job, but honestly, if you've chased maybe 2 times for someone who never even originally got back to the first email, maybe 3, I would just say like it's likely that they're just not engaging out of just pure, because I've had times where it's like I've literally received 6 emails about a pitch that I know someone's like, I know this would be great for you. And I'm like, it's not even out of rudeness, honestly, that I didn't reply. It's just I physically could never reply to all the PR pitches that I get. They're insane. Like, it's just, I get so many. So I think, yeah, sometimes it is just like probably time better spent on someone else, because sometimes I know it's just like, mass emails, but still it then makes you want to like just mute the account, not mute the account, but do you know what I mean? It makes you want to kind of just like be like, I'm archiving this person, I don't want to see them again, because you just feel like you're just constantly under attack.
6 does seem a bit extreme.
Yes, just a tad.
I think I draw the line at 5.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I can see that I've got plenty of questions for you. So let's get to the questions. So, right, okay, so I've got a question from Rebecca, and she says, if a stat is being pitched to you, what do you look for to determine how credible it is? Is there anything you'd recommend including in a pitch so you can easily scan and see that the information is watertight?
Really great question. Now, in answering from my perspective, I guess I write for The Guardian, and Vogue is, I suppose, quite similar in terms of their approach. Like, The Guardian is really quite strict in terms of, sources. I won't necessarily name other publications because it's being recorded, but there are lots of publications in which, it's, as you guys will know, it's like totally fine, whatever the source is. But for me, I know that, like, I guess it depends on what I'm trying to say. Like, if it's an opinion piece, I am slightly more lenient, because I think, if it's like, 1 in 10 women said XYZ about about beauty, and it's in connection with a beauty brand, it doesn't have to be by, the University of Oxford. Like, I've got a point that I'm trying to make within an article, and that facilitates it, and that's kind of fine. But I think, I guess it really does honestly depend on what the stat is as well. Like, for instance, as I said, if it's something to do with beauty, is like a nebulous example, and it's been commissioned, it's a study that's been commissioned by a beauty brand, that's kind of fine with me. I think sometimes it can be a bit less credible, where it's like a beauty brand, for instance, talking about something that is slightly outside of their remit. So that's happening quite a lot, actually, I suppose, with brands becoming slightly more aware and slightly more engaged with certain issues. But sometimes it can feel a little bit like, I don't know, sometimes it can be a bit more difficult, I suppose, to feel like there's credibility when it feels like very much outside of their remit. But then again, like, if someone like Dove is talking about like women and girls, fine, because I guess their work has been like in that space, even external to beauty, for quite a long time. They've been having certain conversations. But yeah, I definitely look at it on a case-by-case basis. Also, I'd say sample size does actually matter quite a bit, to be honest. For me anyway, I don't love it when I see like something that's like, we asked 13 people, and it's very clearly to facilitate a point. But I would say, sorry, I don't know if this is a vague answer. It is slightly on a case-by-case basis, because I definitely have a different approach to, say, opinion pieces compared to like a feature. A feature, I think I'm a little bit more strict on where it's come from.
Cool. Okay. I've got a question here from Tonjay. Do you only write pieces in reaction to things happening in the pop culture sphere, or can you be inspired by a pitch concerning a wider pop culture phenomenon or concept?
Absolutely the latter. I think I write more to the latter. It's just that I guess what I'm writing, I guess because of the way my column is, and it's weekly, and reality TV is probably the biggest genre on television right now, it just means that my column can change. But even then, that's up to me, which isn't always the case for many journalists. Like, for me, it's like, I know that column's coming every single week, so it's totally fine. Like, I guess it's up to me if I see something that's then like, oh, well, you know, the circle is getting a lot of traction. It's probably worth me talking about. But usually, to be perfectly honest, my reality checked column is about pop culture phenomenons. And then I usually end up writing about, for instance, this week, I am writing about the circle, but the Guardian actually preferred the idea that we spoke about. We're talking about producer meddling and which is obviously super common in reality TV, and they said we should actually expand that out into being not just about the circle but looking at other reality TV shows like Big Brother and The Bachelor and all of those to see, and Drag Race comes up everywhere, but just looking at how they have also been involved in producer meddling and what that means. So yeah, I definitely say, like, I personally, again, this is very bespoke to me, but I love conversations that are slightly more broad as opposed to writing to one thing.
Cool. Okay. So I've got a question from Lauren, and she says, when writing about reality TV, do you have to use base topics on, or do you have to base topics on popularity, i.e. viewer figures, or social media interest?
No, certainly not for The Guardian.
Okay.
Absolutely not for The Guardian. Maybe a little bit more for iNews, because I know there is more of a conversation in terms of ensuring that it's something that feels accessible to everybody, in the sense that it's something that everyone's watching and there's a real talking point around it. With The Guardian, I would actually say no. I think if the concept is interesting enough, if it's something that is different enough as the actual show, I don't think it's to do with viewer figures at all. What they might do is be like, for instance with the circle, it's a piece that's now gone from being just about the circle to kind of being about a wider cultural phenomenon of like producer meddling. But I don't think they'd ever flat out be like, we can't write about this, because certainly not The Guardian. Like, I don't know about Vogue, because I don't really write about, like, I'd imagine they'd probably have more of a thing about it. But I think it's honestly, if the concept is interesting and different enough, it'd be fine.
Okay. I've got a question.
Figures rarely come into it. Sorry.
That's all right. It's cool. I've got a question from another Lauren. When it comes to seeing PR emails in your inbox, are you more likely to read an email if you recognise the name of the agency or publicist and have worked with them before, or is the chances of coverage solely based on the subject line or outreach email?
Both. Really good question, but both. I would say there are some emails that I've opened purely because I have a good rapport with the PR in question, and have worked with the agency and know them, and I know what their specialty is, and I think, oh, this could be relevant to me, so I'm going to open this. And there have obviously been others that I've opened because I've been like, oh, well, this seems great and this seems really interesting and really useful. And then the sweet spot is when it's both. That's obviously even more likely. But yeah, I would say it's definitely a combination. Like, there are lots of journalists that I've come across over the years that I still remember their names just because they were so accommodating and helpful and really great. And I will, even if I just get back to say, I'm really sorry, but I can't help you with this right now, I will open it.
Great. Okay. A question from Rebecca. When writing for The Guardian, does the popularity of the article, e.g. clicks, shares, etc., hold any bearing on how The Guardian position the article on the site?
Yep. So yes and no, actually, because for instance, with my columns, they're always going to be like, the reality checked column is in print and it's out we're supposed to be out every week, usually fortnightly, and it comes up in the same place in the paper all the time. But on the website, usually, again, even then it would come up on usually kind of the same place. That being said, if a piece is really like outperforming, then they often will move it to the homepage if it's like getting a lot of traction. They at times will move it, but I also have had very high performing pieces that haven't moved and they've just kind of stayed. I've been told how well read it's been, but based on other factors and other things that are, potentially maybe even doing more well at the time, they haven't moved. So yeah, it can, but it really has to kind of outperform, I think, for it to shift position, especially as I'm someone who writes regularly. So I'm usually in the same place all the time.
Okay, so we've got time for one more. So given how busy journalists are and how long it can take for them to get around to their emails, how long would you say is good to wait before sending a follow-up email to a
That's a
NPR?
really good question. I would say at least 3 days, maybe even 4. Even longer would be great. But it's just honestly, I think like I mean, I've had times where like I've received an email and I've literally received a follow up the next day, and I'm just like, realistically, I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's impossible. I don't have the means to get back, or like I wouldn't have read it. Like, that's the reality.
Yeah.
I think as well. Like, when I say I'm slightly different in terms of my approach to emails. Like, on any given day, I don't know whether it's a form of anxiety, but I can't have like more than like 30 unread emails. Like, my aim of the day is to try to get down below like 6. Like, I just can't have lots of outstanding emails. But then that often means that I'm like, I think I told you a lot of the stuff goes into my promotion. So sometimes I really will take like a whole separate day to be looking at stuff. It's just, it's all over the place. So I think like just giving people a bit of time, like, because we're looking at our pictures, but then we're also like talking to our editors, doing whatever else. It's just such a like juggling act. So I think the likelihood of like receiving a response when you feel like when you're irritated, it's just so much lower. So I feel like there have been times where I've received an email and then 4 days later, 5 days later, someone's been like, hey, I just wanted to check in if you've seen this. No worries if not, but like I just wanted to know, so blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh my god, yes, sorry, I forgot. But when it's like Monday and then it's like Tuesday, someone's like, have you seen this? I'm like, I haven't even gotten back to my editor yet, so no.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so I think that's all we've got time for, but it's been a pleasure, Yomi. So it's been such a great conversation. I appreciate your honesty and all your insight. It's been so fascinating. And so I hope everyone's enjoyed it, and I hope everyone's got so much from this. And I hope you'll all be practicing your subject lines now, making them a little bit more fun, obviously putting your stats in there. And practicing your dad jokes. So again, thank you, Yomi, for sparing your lunchtime. And yes, and please everyone join us for our next Missing Link webinar. We are going to be talking about obviously digital PR disasters, how things can go wrong in PR, how it's not the end of the world, and how actually things going wrong can actually kind of help you grow as a PR, help you kind of improve, and how it's kind of to be expected that things will go wrong, but how in the long run it will make you a better PR, make you a stronger PR, and actually will improve your campaigns and just make you better and stronger. And we're going to have our PR managers going through kind of their experiences and their fails, and they're going to be, again, brutally honest and give some examples of what's gone horribly wrong, how they repaired kind of any damage, if there was any damage. And it should be really interesting, and I will provide details of when that will be in May very soon, so look out for that. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Yomi, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.